You know what's weird? It's weird that your parents have their own bedroom or that you have your own bedroom. You know what else is weird? That you have an opinion about the way things are in the world. Like, we all have a public opinion. And do you know what else is weird? That you invest at least part of your identity in the things that you buy and the clothes that you wear. Now, it wasn't always like that, and here in Unit 4, Topic 5 of AP Euro, we're going to find out how that changed. So if you're ready to get them brain cows milked, let's get to it. Now, as industrialization took root, and we'll talk way more about that in the next unit, the middle classes and the upper classes had much more disposable income than ever before. And the result was increased demand for consumer goods that were being manufactured all over Europe, and this became known as the Consumer Revolution. People now began buying goods not necessarily because they needed them, but because they wanted them. And these goods included porcelain dishes and cotton and linens for home decor and mirrors. There were some consequences to this new flurry to buy stuff. First, because these goods were becoming more affordable, the middle class could purchase some goods of what were previously reserved for the upper class. And that meant that people were increasingly identifying themselves not merely by their religious affiliation or their regional residence, but by the things that they bought. And that had the effect of making the middle class feel a little bit more bougie. Are the kids saying bougie anymore?
No.
Okay.
They say driffy.
Okay. I'm a 42-year-old bald man. I can't keep up. Second, there was a new concern for privacy. Now, prior to the Consumer Revolution, homes were smaller and simpler. With only a few rooms in the house, each room served multiple purposes. You know, most people throughout the Middle Ages lived in one-room houses, and the whole family slept together in the same bed, which, yeah, I'm sure made it awkward when mom and dad, am I the only one who's getting uncomfortable? Anyway, now people began to design homes with more rooms, each of which had its own specific purpose. And the increasing concern for privacy meant that people were building new kinds of rooms in their houses, such as the boudoir. This was a room specifically designed for the wife of the house to be apart from her husband, either alone or entertaining other women. Now, a third effect of the Consumer Revolution was new venues for leisure activities. For example, people gathered together in coffee houses, and thanks to the Columbian Exchange, coffee was growing in popularity among Europeans, and they built coffee houses in order to drink it. In contrast to taverns, where you got sauced up and sang loud songs, coffee houses were open to men of all classes, and the emphasis was on discussing the revolutionary ideas of the day. And then especially in urban areas, we can witness the rise of spectator sports. Some of the most popular were blood sports, which emphasized, blood, and some of the more popular venues hosted bull baiting and cockfighting. Now, a subset of the Consumer Revolution was the reading revolution, and that's exactly what it sounds like. As literacy continued to spread during this period, thanks in no small part to new efforts to educate children and the abundance of printed materials made available by the printing press, more and more people began to read. Not only did the amount of books increase, but the kinds of books began to vary as well. For example, in France, the number of religious devotional books began to decrease, and books on history, law, and science and the arts began to increase rapidly. And these reading materials came in all forms. In addition to books, you had newspapers and periodicals and pamphlets, and let's not forget the wildly popular encyclopedia produced by Denis Diderot. But with all these new ideas floating around and more people exploring ideas outside the bounds of the Bible and religious devotional literature, censorship increased to keep them at bay. Now, mainly the censors were religious. For example, the Catholic Church sanctioned Diderot's encyclopedia for its brazen questioning of religious authority. But even with the attempts at censorship, the reading revolution took hold and people were reading more than ever. Okay, now the arts also shifted emphases during this period as well. They shifted from the celebration of religious themes and royal power of kings to an emphasis on the private life and public good. Now remember what we talked about in another video. Until about 1750, art in the Baroque style promoted religious feeling and was employed by monarchs to illustrate state power. Like, monarchs embraced Baroque art and paid for it because it was ostentatious and made them look powerful, and the church did so as well. Remember how we talked about Gian Lorenzo Bernini's magnificent piazzas and how he designed ornate chapels for the renovation of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome? And there was also the composer Johann Sebastian Bach, who wrote many of his compositions to be performed in a royal court or high church service. So all these artists are plying their trade in service of the church and monarchs. But in the 18th century, the nature and subject matter of art shifted from state and religious themes to themes that appealed to bourgeois society. Now, what in the fresh heck does bourgeois mean? And I'm not just throwing around weird French terms for funsies, you actually have to know this one. So bourgeois society is essentially the middle class, and it emphasizes their materialistic values. So art in the 17th and early 18th century in the Baroque style was meant to awe the bourgeois society, whereas now in the second half of the 18th century, Baroque art was meant to appeal to bourgeois tastes. And a good example of this shift is the work of Rembrandt. He still painted biblical scenes like you see here in his Storm on the Sea of Galilee, but compared to the biblical scenes of the High Renaissance, you can see that this is way more down to earth. But he also depicted scenes from everyday life, like here in this painting called Slaughtered Ox. mean, come on, ain't no king gonna hang that in his bedroom and say, "Behold my power." No, art of this kind appealed to more common folks. Now later on, a new artistic movement arose known as neoclassicism. And in contrast to the opulence and grandeur of Baroque, neoclassical artists prized simplicity and symmetry. For example, consider the Pantheon in Paris built in the neoclassical style by Jacques-Germain Soufflot. And although it was commissioned by Louis XV, it is an example of neoclassicism because of its simplicity and symmetry. Now, literature also shifted emphases to focus on the Enlightenment and commercial values of the bourgeois society as well. For example, you had Daniel Defoe's novel Robinson Crusoe, which was the story of a man shipwrecked on an island who learns to survive and thrive, and he does all of this without any guidance from religious authority or Christian doctrines. I mean, can you imagine? Or consider Goethe's play Faust, which is about a man who sells his soul to the devil in order to attain secret knowledge and abundant wealth. And the main theme of that play is the human yearning for meaning, a yearning that was increasingly felt by bourgeois society. Alright, click right here for more videos reviewing Unit 4 of AP Euro. If you need even more help getting an A in your class and a 5 on your exam in May, then click right here and grab my AP Euro review pack, which is going to make all your dreams come true. I'll catch you on the flip-flop. Heimler out.